The Inheritance. Commander Ilara Chen stared at the holographic assignment notice hovering before her, with what could only be described as stunned disbelief. After graduating top of her class at the Alliance Academy and serving with distinction for 8 years, she had expected her first command to be something respectable. Instead, the text before her eyes confirmed her worst fears. You are hereby assigned command of the Alliance vessel Persistence, effective immediately. The Persistence. Everyone in the fleet knew about that ship. A relic from the early days of the Galactic Alliance, before humans had even been discovered. Its outdated technology, constant breakdowns, and minimal weaponry had made it a laughingstock, a punishment detail for officers who had upset their superiors. There must be some mistake, Ilara said, looking up at Admiral Harrington. The Admiral's weathered face remained impassive. No mistake, Commander. The Alliance Council was quite specific. The Persistence needs a captain, and you're to report for duty within 48 hours. But sir, with all due respect, I was promised the Horizon, a modern scout vessel with. The Horizon has been reassigned to Captain Frall of the Sentient delegation. Harrington interrupted, not uncannily. Politics, Commander. The older species are concerned about humanity's rapid advancement within the Alliance. They feel we need to be reminded of our place. Ilara's jaw tightened. 15 years since humanity had joined the Galactic Alliance, and still they were treated as impulsive children. Humans had adapted quickly to alien technologies, often finding innovative applications that the original designers had never considered. This tendency had made the other species nervous. Consider it an opportunity, Chen, the Admiral added, lowering his voice. Show them what a human can do, even with outdated tools. 2 days later, Ilara stood in the cavernous docking bay of Arcturus Station, gazing up at what was to be her first command. The Persistence looked even worse than the stories suggested. Its hull was a patchwork of repairs, different sections clearly replaced over its lengthy service history. At nearly 70 years old, it was ancient by modern standards. A small group of officers waited at the docking ramp, and Ilara straightened her uniform before approaching them. This was her crew, apparently, all humans. Another slight from the Alliance Council. Commander on deck, called out a tall, lanky officer with lieutenant's insignia. The officers snapped to attention, though Ilara didn't miss the looks of disappointment that flashed across their faces. They'd been hoping for someone else, someone who could save them from this assignment. At ease, she said, examining each of them in turn. I'm Commander Ilara Chen. And despite what you may be thinking, this isn't a punishment detail. With all due respect, ma'am, said a stocky woman with engineering insignia. Have you seen our ship? Ilara allowed herself a small smile. Lieutenant. Torres, ma'am. Chief Engineer. Lieutenant Torres, I have indeed seen our ship. I've also read her full technical specifications. The Persistence was built by the Aldari, correct? Torres nodded. Yes, ma'am. Before they withdrew from active participation in the Alliance. The Aldari, Ilara continued, addressing the whole group, were known for over-engineering everything they built. Their ships were designed to last centuries, not decades. The reason the Persistence has been relegated to backwater patrols isn't just politics. It's because no one knows how to properly maintain Aldari technology anymore. This caught their attention. Ilara gestured to the ship. I want a full diagnostic of all systems, from stem to stern. Not just the standard Alliance protocols. I want to know what this ship was originally capable of before 80 years of makeshift repairs. Lieutenant Torres, you'll lead that effort. Torres looked skeptical, but nodded. Lieutenant Commander. Ilara addressed the tall officer who had announced her arrival. Singh. Ma'am. Tactical Officer. Singh. I want a complete inventory of our weapon systems, including parts we might have in storage. The rest of you, report to your stations. We depart in 6 hours. As her new crew dispersed, Ilara took another long look at the Persistence, Perhaps this wasn't the prestigious assignment she'd hoped for, but something about the battered old ship called to her. Like humanity itself within the Alliance, the Persistence had been underestimated and overlooked. Perhaps it was time to change that. 3 weeks later, deep in the relatively empty space of Sector 87, Ilara sat in the captain's chair on the Persistence's bridge, reviewing Lieutenant Torres's latest report. What they'd discovered about the ship was fascinating. "You're telling me the Persistence was designed as a testbed for experimental technology?" Ilara asked, scrolling through the data. Torres nodded enthusiastically. "That's our theory, ma'am. The Aldari were secretive about their advanced research, but the Persistence has structural components that make no sense unless they were planning to install systems that never made it past the prototype stage." "Like what?" "For one, the power distribution network is ridiculously overbuilt. The reactor we're currently using is actually a replacement, a downgrade from the original. The power conduits could handle at least 3 times what we're pushing through them." Singh leaned forward from his tactical station, "and the weapon mounts are designed for much heavier ordnance than these pea-shooters were carrying. Plus, there are empty bays that could have been intended for torpedo systems that were never installed." Ilara tapped her fingers thoughtfully on the armrest. "So we're flying an experimental prototype that never received its experimental components." "Exactly," Torres said. "But here's the thing, Commander. Some of the technology the Aldari were developing 70 years ago mirrors theoretical concepts we've been working on back on Earth. With a bit of creative engineering, we might be able to realize some of the potential the original designers intended." "Creative engineering?" Ilara raised an eyebrow. "You mean unauthorized modifications to an Alliance vessel?" Torres hesitated. "I wouldn't put it quite that way, ma'am. More like restoring systems to their intended specifications." Before Ilara could respond, the communications officer called out, "Commander, we're picking up a distress signal. Automated emergency beacon from a mining outpost on Helios IV. Set course immediately," Ilara ordered. "Time to arrival." 2 hours at standard drive, the helm officer reported. Ilara frowned. Helios IV was in a remote system, technically outside their patrol route. If there was trouble, the Persistence might be the only Alliance vessel within range. "Push the engines to maximum safe parameters," she ordered. "Lieutenant Torres, I want every bit of power you can give me." Torres grinned. "Aye, Commander. You might be surprised what this old girl can do when properly motivated." The Persistence dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Helios system, sensors immediately scanning for the source of the distress call. What they found sent a chill through the bridge crew. 3 vessels in orbit around Helios IV, Singh reported, his voice tight. "Configuration matches known Vrex warships." Ilara's blood ran cold. The Vrex were a violent, predatory species that existed at the fringes of known space, not officially at war with the Alliance, but responsible for dozens of raids on outlying colonies. "Life signs on the mining outpost?" she asked. "Faint readings, approximately 40 individuals, clustered in what appears to be a shelter. The Vrex are deploying ground forces." Ilara assessed their options quickly. The Persistence was outgunned and outmatched by even 1 Vrex ship, let alone 3. Standard protocol would be to retreat and call for reinforcements, but by the time help arrived, the colonists would be dead or taken as slaves. "Tactical assessment, Commander Singh." Singh's expression was grim. "In a direct confrontation, we wouldn't last 5 minutes, Commander." "Then we don't confront them directly," Ilara said, her mind racing. "Have they detected us yet?" "Negative. We're at extreme sensor range, and our power signature is minimal." A plan began to form in Ilara's mind. Reckless, against regulations, but potentially their only option. "Lieutenant Torres, remember that creative engineering we were discussing. I think it's time for a crash course." Torres's eyes widened. "Mom, you said our power distribution network is overbuilt. What if we reversed the polarity and created a massive electromagnetic pulse? something that could temporarily disable Vrex systems without permanently damaging our own. Torres thought for a moment. Theoretically possible, but risky. We'd need to reroute several critical systems, and there's no guarantee. Do it, Ilara ordered. Commander Singh, what do we know about Vrex shield harmonics? Singh checked his tactical database. Their shields are tuned to deflect high-energy weapons, but they're vulnerable to certain frequencies. If we could modulate our laser arrays to match those frequencies, could we use components from our sensor array to create a resonance disruptor? Singh's eyes lit up with understanding. Yes, ma'am. It would weaken our long-range detection, but if we got close enough. Make it happen, Ilara said, standing to address the entire bridge crew. I know what I'm asking is unorthodox and possibly against regulations, but there are 40 people down there counting on us. We're going to save them, and we're going to do it by thinking differently than anyone expects us to. The next hours were a frenzy of activity as the crew of the Persistence worked to implement Ilara's desperate plan. Torres and her engineering team tore into systems that hadn't been modified in decades, repurposing components and rerouting power in ways the Alliance would definitely not approve of. Meanwhile, Ilara directed the Persistence on a wide approach to Helios IV, using the system's gas giant to mask their signature as they drew closer to the Vrex vessels. Modifications complete, Commander, Torres reported, wiping sweat from her brow. But I should warn you, this is completely experimental. Once we trigger the pulse, our systems will reset. We'll have approximately 30 seconds of vulnerability before our shields and weapons come back online. Understood. Are we in position, Helm? Yes, ma'am. Hidden behind Helios V's moon, 3,000 kilometers from the nearest Vrex ship. Ilara took a deep breath. All hands, prepare for combat maneuvers. On my mark, break cover and proceed at full impulse toward the lead Vrex vessel. Torres, trigger the EMP when we're within optimal range. The Persistence surged from behind the moon, its ancient engines pushing to speeds they hadn't reached in decades. The Vrex ships, caught by surprise, began to turn ponderously toward this unexpected threat. They're powering weapons, Singh called out. EMP ready, Torres reported. Optimal range in 3, 2, 1. Now, Ilara commanded. The lights on the bridge flickered as a massive surge of energy erupted from the Persistence, expanding outward in an invisible wave. As it washed over the Vrex ships, their lights went dark, their engines sputtered, and they began to drift. EMP successful, Torres exclaimed. Vrex ships are experiencing total systems failure. Our systems rebooting now. Defensive systems online, Singh reported moments later. Modified weapons ready. Target the propulsion and weapon systems, Ilara ordered. Fire at will. The Persistence's ancient laser arrays, now modified to penetrate Vrex shields, fired with surgical precision. The lead Vrex ship, still reeling from the electromagnetic pulse, took hit after hit to critical systems. They're recovering, Singh warned. Shields coming back online. The other 2 ships are turning to engage. Ilara had expected this. Evasive pattern Delta. Prepare for emergency jump on my mark. The Persistence shuddered as return fire from the Vrex ships struck its shields, but Torres's modifications held. Barely. I'm reading transport signatures from the mining colony, the science officer reported. It looks like the colonists are being evacuated via emergency transporters. Alliance transponder signals, the communications officer confirmed. A rescue ship must have been nearby and responded to our distress call. Ilara allowed herself a momentary smile. They'd succeeded in their primary mission, buying enough time for the colonists to be rescued. All ships, clear the system, she ordered. Emergency jump, now. The Persistence lurched into FTL, just as the Vrex ships brought their main weapons to bear, escaping by mere seconds. But as the stars stretched into streaks around them, Ilara knew their troubles were just beginning. They had directly engaged an enemy force while drastically modifying Alliance equipment. actions that would almost certainly lead to a court-martial. But looking around at her crew's faces, exhausted but proud, Ilara couldn't bring herself to regret her decisions. They had saved lives today, and in the process, they had discovered something important about their supposedly obsolete ship. The Persistence had potential, and so did they. "Well done, everyone," she said, settling back into her captain's chair. "Now let's see what else this old ship can do." The Reckoning. 3 months after their encounter with the Frex, the Persistence was a different vessel entirely. What had begun as emergency modifications for a rescue mission had evolved into a systematic reimagining of the ship's capabilities. Commander Ilara Chen stood in the newly expanded engineering bay, watching as Lieutenant Torres directed her team in the installation of what they'd nicknamed the Chaos Drive, a propulsion system that utilized principles of quantum uncertainty to achieve speeds well beyond standard Alliance drives. "You're sure this will work?" Ilara asked, eyeing the complex array of equipment that bore little resemblance to any authorized Alliance technology. Torres grinned, the dark circles under her eyes testament to the countless hours she'd spent bringing this project to life. "Theoretically, absolutely. In practice, we'll find out when we test it. But the Aldari schematics we found hidden in the ship's original database suggest they were working on something similar." The discovery of that hidden database had been a turning point. Buried beneath layers of outdated operating systems was a treasure trove of Aldari research, experimental designs, theoretical physics, and technological concepts decades ahead of their time. It was as if the Persistence had been preserving this knowledge, waiting for someone curious enough to find it. "Commander to the bridge," came Singh's voice over the intercom, interrupting Ilara's thoughts. "Priority message from Alliance Command." Ilara exchanged a concerned glance with Torres. Since their encounter with the Frex, they'd been careful to maintain the appearance of a standard patrol vessel, hiding their modifications whenever they docked at Alliance stations. But rumors had begun to circulate about the unexpected capabilities the Persistence had demonstrated. "On my way," Ilara responded, heading for the turbolift. On the bridge, the main view screen displayed the stern face of Admiral Harrington. His expression did little to ease Ilara's concerns. "Commander Chen," the Admiral began without preamble, "I've received a rather interesting report from Helios IV. The survivors of the mining colony have some remarkable stories about how a single outdated Alliance vessel managed to drive off 3 Vrex warships." Ilara maintained a neutral expression. "We were fortunate, sir. The Vrex weren't expecting resistance." "Indeed." Harrington's eyes narrowed. "I've also received unusual power readings from your last 3 supply stops. Readings that don't match the known specifications of the Persistence." A tense silence fell over the bridge. This was the moment Ilara had been dreading. "Permission to speak freely, sir," she requested. "Granted. The Persistence is more than she appears to be, Admiral. My crew has discovered technologies and designs the Aldari were developing decades ago. Technologies that were never implemented, but could significantly enhance our capabilities against threats like the Vrex. So you've been conducting unauthorized modifications to an Alliance vessel." Harrington's voice was dangerously quiet. "We've been restoring systems to their intended specifications," Ilara replied, echoing Torres's words from months ago. "The Alliance has been underutilizing this ship for decades." Harrington's expression darkened. "Commander, you are ordered to return to Arcturus Station immediately for a full inspection and review. Depending on the findings, you and your crew may face court-martial for violation of Alliance protocols." Before Ilara could respond, the communication officer interrupted. "Sir, emergency broadcast from Epsilon Colony. They're under attack. Massive Vrex fleet, at least 15 warships." Harrington's face paled. "Epsilon Colony has over 10,000 civilians." Ilara checked the navigation display. "We're the closest Alliance vessel, Admiral. 2 hours at maximum speed. The nearest battle group is 5 hours away," Harrington said grimly. "But your orders stand, Commander. The Persistence is in no condition to. With all due respect, sir, Ilara interrupted, we're exactly the right condition. Those people don't have 5 hours. A long moment passed as Harrington visibly wrestled with the decision. Finally, he nodded once, sharply. Proceed to Epsilon Colony, Commander. Render what assistance you can until reinforcements arrive. But understand this, you're likely flying into a suicide mission. Better us than no one, sir, Ilara replied. Persistence out. As the view screen went dark, Ilara turned to her crew. You all heard. This isn't your battle. This was my decision to modify the ship, my responsibility. If anyone wants to use the escape pods before we engage, I'll understand. The bridge remained silent. Then Singh spoke up from Tactical. With respect, Commander, we're all in this together. Every one of us has contributed to what the Persistence has become. Torres, who had arrived on the bridge during the conversation, nodded in agreement. Besides, I'm dying to see if the Chaos Drive works as advertised. A wave of determination swept through the bridge. These were her people, human ingenuity and adaptability personified. Set course for Epsilon Colony, Ilara ordered. Lieutenant Torres, it's time to see what this ship can really do. The journey to Epsilon Colony took just under an hour, less than half the time Ilara had estimated. The Chaos Drive functioned beyond their wildest expectations, tearing through space in ways that defied conventional physics. What they found when they arrived was a nightmare. 15 Vrex warships surrounded the colony, their weapons systematically destroying its defenses. The orbital stations had already fallen, and ground bombardment had begun. Status of colony shields, Ilara demanded. Failing, the science officer reported. Estimated collapse in 20 minutes. There are still thousands of people in the main settlement. Ilara studied the tactical display. The Vrex had arranged their ships in a standard attack formation, one that assumed they faced a conventional opponent. Lieutenant Torres, status of all R, special modifications. Torres checked her engineering console. All systems operational, Commander. Though I should note that simultaneous use of multiple experimental systems may have unpredictable results. Noted. Ilara took a deep breath. Communication, broadcast on all frequencies. I want the Vrex to hear this. When the channel opened, Ilara spoke clearly and calmly. Attention Vrex vessels. This is Commander Ilara Chen of the Alliance Starship Persistence. You are engaged in an illegal attack on an Alliance colony. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The response was predictable, laughter, followed by threats in the harsh Vrex language. They say they'll add our ship to their collection of trophies, the communications officer translated. Let's disappoint them, Ilara said grimly. Tactical Plan Omega. Engage. The Persistence surged forward, its modified engines pushing it to speeds that made it appear to flicker in and out of normal space. Singh activated what they had dubbed the Ghost Protocol, a system that created multiple sensor echoes, making it appear as if several ships were attacking simultaneously. The Vrex formation broke, confused by the contradictory sensor readings. One ship fired, its weapons passing harmlessly through a sensor ghost. First phase successful, Singh reported. They're splitting up to chase our echoes. Activate the shield inverter, Ilara ordered. Torres complied, initiating a system they had developed based on Aldari theoretical physics. Rather than simply blocking enemy weapons, the inverter absorbed their energy and redirected it to the Persistence's own weapon systems. As 2 Vrex ships fired on their position, the Persistence seemed to glow briefly, before releasing the energy back in a concentrated beam that sliced through the lead ship's propulsion systems. Direct hit, Singh exclaimed. 1 enemy vessel disabled. But 14 remained, and they were beginning to adapt to the Persistence's tactics. A coordinated volley struck the ship, causing the deck to shudder violently. Shields at 70%, Torres reported. The inverter can't handle multiple simultaneous impacts. Ilara studied the tactical display. The Vrex were reforming, coordinating their attacks more effectively. They needed something unexpected. Lieutenant Torres, remember that theoretical application of the Aldari phase technology we discussed? Torres's eyes widened. The one that would let us briefly exist out of phase with normal space. Commander, we've never tested it under combat conditions. No time like the present, Ilara replied. Prepare to implement on my mark. As the Vrex ships closed in, Ilara gave the order. Now. For a moment, it seemed as if nothing happened. Then, to the astonishment of everyone on the bridge, the Persistence passed directly through the hull of a Vrex warship, their matter temporarily out of phase with each other. As they emerged on the other side, Torres triggered a return to normal phase, simultaneously releasing a spread of specially modified torpedoes inside the Vrex ship. The resulting explosion tore the enemy vessel apart from within, sending shockwaves that damaged 2 nearby ships. It worked, Torres exclaimed, though her console flashed with warnings. But the phase generator is fried. We can't do that again. 3 Vrex ships down, 12 to go, and the Persistence was beginning to show the strain of its modifications. Warning lights flashed across multiple stations as systems overloaded or failed. Commander, the science officer called out, I'm detecting Alliance signatures approaching. The battle group. Ilara checked the chronometer. They're early. The colony must have gotten a distress call out before we arrived, Singh suggested. But the reinforcements were still minutes away, and the remaining Vrex ships were now focusing all their attention on the Persistence. Impact after impact rocked the ship as they coordinated their fire. Shields failing, Torres reported grimly. Hull breaches on decks 5 through 7. Emergency force fields holding. For now. Ilara gripped the arms of her command chair. They needed to survive just a few minutes longer. Divert all remaining power to the main deflector dish. Prepare to implement the resonance cascade. This was their last, most desperate modification. An application of Aldari harmonic theory that could, theoretically, create a subspace distortion that would disrupt the molecular cohesion of any vessel caught within it. It was also likely to burn out most of the Persistence's remaining systems. All hands, secure for possible extreme turbulence, Ilara ordered shipwide. This could get rough. As the Vrex closed in for what they thought would be a killing blow, the Persistence's deflector dish began to glow with an unearthly light. Waves of energy pulsed outward, warping the very fabric of space around them. The effect on the Vrex ships was immediate and devastating. Their hulls began to ripple and distort, internal explosions blossoming as critical systems failed catastrophically. 3 ships simply broke apart, while others spun out of control, their crews unable to maintain their systems against the subspace disruption. On the Persistence, the situation was nearly as dire. The bridge plunged into darkness as primary power failed, emergency lighting casting everything in a dim red glow. All weapons offline, Singh reported. Shields gone. Life support on emergency backup. Main computer failing, added the science officer. We're losing all our modifications. Ilara watched as the view screen flickered, showing the remaining Vrex ships retreating just as the Alliance battle group arrived in a blaze of weapons fire. They had succeeded. Epsilon Colony was saved, and the Vrex threat neutralized, at least for now. But the cost had been high. The Persistence drifted lifelessly. Its experimental systems burned out, its hull breached in multiple locations. In their effort to prove the ship's worth, they might have destroyed it completely. All hands, abandon ship, Ilara began to order, but Torres interrupted. Wait, Commander. The Aldari core is still online. The what? Ilara turned to her chief engineer in confusion. Torres's fingers flew across her console. It's something we discovered buried deep within the ship's central systems, like a backup processor the Aldari installed. It's been dormant all this time, but the cascade seems to have activated it. Before Ilara could respond, the ship shuddered, but not from damage. Throughout the vessel, systems began to restart, but in ways the crew had never seen before. Holographic interfaces appeared at each station, displaying information in the elegant flowing script of the Aldari. "The ship is healing itself," the science officer said in wonder. "I'm detecting nanite activity throughout the hull, repairing breaches." Torres stared at her console in amazement. "It's implementing the theoretical designs from the database, but doing it properly, not with our makeshift modifications." A message appeared on the main view screen in Aldari script, then translated itself to Alliance standard. "Persistence protocol activated. Full systems restoration commencing." "I don't understand," Ilara said, watching as the ship literally rebuilt itself around them. "What is happening?" An Alliance cruiser appeared alongside them, and Admiral Harrington's voice came through the still-functioning communication system. "Commander Chen, what is the status of your vessel? Our sensors are detecting unusual activity." Ilara looked around at her bewildered crew, then back at the view screen where the Aldari text continued to scroll as new systems came online. Systems unlike anything in the Alliance inventory. "Admiral," she replied, "I believe the Persistence has decided to show us what it was truly designed to be." 6 weeks later, the Persistence sat in a special dock at Arcturus Station, surrounded by Alliance scientists and engineers who swarmed over it like ants, studying the technologies that had lain dormant within it for decades. In a conference room overlooking the dock, Commander Ilara Chen and her senior officers sat across from Admiral Harrington and 3 representatives from the Alliance Council. "So let me understand this correctly," said the Pelisian representative, his iridescent scales shimmering in the bright lights of the room. "You're saying the Aldari intentionally placed this vessel in the Alliance fleet as a what exactly?" "A safeguard," Ilara replied. "According to the data we've recovered from the fully activated Aldari core, the Persistence was designed to remain dormant until a species with the right combination of ingenuity and desperation came along." "A species like humans," Harrington observed. "Precisely. The Aldari were known for their foresight. They withdrew from active participation in the Alliance because they foresaw conflicts that the Alliance wasn't prepared to handle, like the Vrex." The Tellarite representative snorted. "So they left us a ship that would only work for humans. How very convenient for your species, Commander." "Not exclusively for humans," Torres interjected. "The ship was designed to respond to certain approaches to problem-solving, approaches that happen to align with human methodologies. Our willingness to experiment, to push boundaries, to think laterally. The qualities that make the older species nervous about us," Singh added. Admiral Harrington leaned forward. "The fact remains, Commander Chen, that you and your crew violated numerous Alliance protocols. By rights, you should all face court-martial." And yet, the third counselor, a Denibian with flowing tentacles, spoke for the first time. "They saved Epsilon Colony and revealed technologies that could significantly enhance our defenses against the Vrex and other threats." A thoughtful silence fell over the room. Finally, Harrington spoke again. "The Council has reached a decision. In light of your actions and the extraordinary circumstances, all charges against you and your crew are dropped." Relief washed over Ilara, but Harrington wasn't finished. "Furthermore, you are to retain command of the Persistence with your current crew. Your new assignment is to work with Alliance scientists to understand, and where appropriate, implement the Aldari technologies throughout the fleet." "Thank you, Admiral," Ilara said, barely containing her surprise. "Don't thank me yet, Commander," Harrington replied with a hint of a smile. "There's a condition. The Alliance is forming a new rapid response division, specifically designed to counter the Vrex threat. The Persistence will be its flagship, and you'll be responsible for training other ships and other species in your unorthodox methods." The Pelisian counselor looked distinctly uncomfortable with this. "We still have reservations about human approaches to problem-solving." "With respect, Counselor," Ilara replied, "those approaches just saved 10,000 lives. Perhaps it's time the Alliance embraced a little human creativity." As the meeting concluded and they'd filed out of the conference room, Ilara paused at the viewport, gazing down at the Persistence. The ship no longer looked ancient or obsolete. Its hull gleamed with new alloys, and subtle changes to its structure hinted at the advanced technologies now fully integrated into its systems. Torres joined her at the window. "Not bad for the weakest ship in the fleet, huh?" Ilara smiled. "I don't think anyone will be calling it that anymore." Below them, the Persistence seemed to shine a little brighter, as if in agreement. Once dismissed and forgotten, it had become something entirely new, just like humanity itself within the Galactic Alliance. Underestimated, overlooked, but possessing potential that was only beginning to be understood. The weakest ship in the fleet had become a nightmare for those who threatened the Alliance, and a beacon of hope for those who defended it.